Welcome to We De Han Su Up, The Great Minds. I'm James Cameron, and I'm a filmmaker, and I'm an explorer. Well, it's been pointed out to me a number of times that I have strong female characters in my films. Starting with Sarah Connor in the Terminator, and obviously then Terminator 2, she's transformed into a real warrior by the trauma of the first film. The same thing with the Ripley character, traumatized in Ridley Scott's film Alien, coming back, fiercely protective, the kind of warrior mother. So there's definitely a theme. There's a theme there. And I've had other strong female characters in other films. True Lies, the mousy housewife that becomes a kind of super spy by the end of the movie, played by Jamie Curtis. And The Abyss, the brilliant, engineer who's a very challenging person who emerges as somebody that we love by the end of the film for her intelligence and her strength of will. Titanic was Rose's story. It was her transformation by the end, largely due to his impact on her, but it was her story that we followed. So female characters, what's that all about? Why am I doing that? I mean, you could take an analytical approach and say, I was doing that which others weren't doing at that time. Seemed kind of obvious to me. Female characters were interesting. And so it was almost in a way filling a void or creating a niche, because mostly female characters back at that time were kind of the wife or the girlfriend or the sex object or whatever, the siren, the seductress, the femme fatale, all of those roles, but never central to the story, never the one who exhibited the intelligence, the will, the survival will, the protective thing, and so on. So you could be analytical, say that it was just fulfilling a need. 50% of the audience is female, potentially, if they feel like they've got something to show up for, and I'm not talking about just rom-coms. But, I think everything goes deeper than that, and it's psychological. So in my world, growing up, I had two very strong female role models. My mother, who was an artist and a very willful person, in my eyes, a very admirable person, and my grandmother, who was, very iron-willed, kind of ran the whole family. So while she was very authoritarian, my mother had a balance of being both authoritarian, which mothers are, and very artistic and very encouraging to me in terms of my artistry and my curiosity and so on. And so, look, I was surrounded by good examples, I think, growing up. I loved female characters in movies. I was fascinated by women in general, their perspective on the world, and so on. And this, I guess I was kind of a feminist at the time without even realizing it. None of these were highly formulated thoughts, like I'm going to go out and be a famous movie director by creating female characters. It wasn't like that at all. I just followed that which interested me and excited me in terms of storytelling. And I just like the idea of following somebody that people might classify as a victim who turns out to have a warrior spirit within them. It's the classic trope of, well, you picked the wrong guy to mess with. Except why does it have to be a guy? They picked the wrong girl to mess with in Terminator, and they found out the hard way in Terminator 2. I liked that. So obviously there are a lot of reasons, and there were a lot of reasons to continue to do that, because I got a lot of positive feedback from women, from audiences everywhere. I think it's part of the strength of my movies commercially that they appeal as action films both to males and females. And that's unusual. Most action films appeal to a very heavily skewed male audience, but my films have always been practically 50-50, and I'm proud of that. Now, it gets a bit tricky these days because we're also trying to empower women as writers and as directors, and they're so poorly represented even today in Hollywood and really around the world, that I feel like, okay, I need to step back. I don't want to tell a female story at the expense of a director, female director getting their shot. But that said, I was married to a female director, Catherine Bigelow, fantastic director, first woman to ever win an Academy Award for directing, and she didn't play by that rule that's being used today.
I'd love to just think of myself as a filmmaker. I'm ever grateful if I can, inspire some young, intrepid, tenacious, male or female filmmaker.
So, today, if you're making Wonder Woman, you get a female director. If you're making Captain Marvel, female superhero, you get a woman. Catherine never played by those rules. She would have been horrified if she thought she was getting a gig as a director because she was a woman. That concept horrified her, and she certainly wasn't interested in women's issues, So I think it should be very gender agnostic, the whole directing process and so on. But anyway, so somehow I guess early on I was just all about wanting to extol the virtues and the strengths of women, and I still enjoy that. I mean, I'm finishing up a film right now, Avatar: The Way of Water. It's a couple of very strong female characters, not just one but two, three if you include Kate Winslet's character. All the women are interesting in this film. I happen to think all the characters are interesting, but I think all the women are very interesting. So I'm not going to back off that throttle.